This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman, and you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Get charged up for action that'll shock your system.
Tell me that's not cool.
An unstoppable superhero and his crew embark on impossible missions and will bring mutated villains to justice.
When Static's in the house, bad guys better step off.
Pull the plug on crime with the adventures of Static Shock. Yeah!
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 164 of the DCAU Review. I am Liam, and with me as he always is Cal. Cal, we are wrapping up our latest stay in the city, of Dakota. And we've got a pretty fun episode that not only ties into past DCAU episodes, which we've reviewed, but also features maybe the biggest, at least the most powerful guest star in Static Shock history here today.
That is right, Liam. We have stayed, as you said, the entire month here with Static. We covered a lot of season 1 episodes thus far, and revisited some of Static's main rogues. But interestingly enough, in this one, the main baddie is in fact from Superman's world. That's right, the world of Metropolis, crashing right here in the area, city, state, the country of Dakota. Not really sure, but that's right. We are covering, in case you haven't figured it out, we are covering the Static Shock season 3 episode, Toys in the Hood.
That's right. Come talking that trash and they'll pull your card.
That's right. It's a great Eazy-E reference here in the title, but I think I buried the lead here. Not only does the Toyman make an appearance, and not only is this a direct sequel to a Superman the Animated Series episode, but also it features the Man of Steel himself. That's right. Both Clark Kent and Superman happen to appear in this week's episode as well. So as does Toyman and Darcy from the last episode, last we left them, Superman the Animated Series episode Obsession, which you of course can revisit in the archives at DCAUreview.com or on your favorite podcast app.
That's right, and we will get into the episode and all of our thoughts on the plots, visuals, music, and voice acting in just a moment. But we just want to say, as it turns out, it is exactly 1 year, almost to the day, since we reviewed Obsession. We reviewed Obsession on the final Saturday in June of 2020, and here we are on the final Saturday in June of 2021, and we are reviewing its direct sequel here in the world of Static Shock. And if you think we did that on purpose, you're right. We totally did. It's not an accident.
We totally have that much forethought and foresight to plan things out just so that it lines up exactly. Right, Liam?
We definitely didn't think, hey, what episode do you want to review next week? I guess this one like 10 minutes before before we started recording. That never happens. We always plan these things out years in advance. We have it through episode 1000 planned out.
That's right.
But on a more serious note here, as we will get into the plot here in just a moment. But before we do, Cal, I must of course grace the listeners with the official Imdb synopsis for this week's episode.
That is right. Still looking for a sponsor for this episode, since for the IMDb synopsis portion of the program. If you'd like to sponsor this segment, reach out to us. We're not into really hawking any of the normal stuff. We're not looking at selling pills for erectile dysfunction or shaving your private parts. But hey, I guess we could be dissuaded to hawk something else. But anyway, yes, Liam, this episode originally debuted back on the Kids WB, back all the way on, according to the DCAU wiki at least, back on May the 3rd, 2003, meaning we just passed the 18-year anniversary of this episode debuting.
That's right. So this is for the episode Toys in the Hood, which was written by John Ridley, John Semper, and Ernie Altbacker, directed by Unknown, because there isn't one credited. Music by Richard Wolff, and animation by Dong Woo. And that synopsis reads as such. Toyman and Darcy Moore are in cahoots together. They hatch an elaborate plan to produce a new body for Darcy with Daisy as the mold. Can Static stop Darcy from doing more harm to Daisy?
Oh, a little cliffhanger with a question mark there. Can she? That's a tune in and find out. I kind of dig that. Okay. All right. Well, first, I guess, Liam, before we get into our plot synopsis here, as we break it down, I will say first and foremost, if you happen to have not watched this episode in a while, or you are looking to maybe refresh it, watch it along after you've listened to this episode, or maybe you're going to pause it and go watch it on the HBO Max app, there's going to be a bit of trouble that you run into because this episode is not on the HBO Max app, Liam.
Yeah, that was something we found when we were going to try to review this episode. There is a shortage of legal ways to watch this episode currently, unless you have the physical DVDs that they released quite a few years ago at this point. Static has not had a Blu-ray release, so that's not an option. It's pretty hard to find a way to watch this at all, much less a legal one. So would love to understand why this episode was on in with the regular Static episodes when it was on the DC Universe streaming app before that transitioned to just being comic books. So I'm not sure if I thought if it would be like a rights thing or something, some weird rule that could have disqualified this episode for some reason. And again, I don't know what that would be because this was all produced by, DC and Warner Animation and all that. So I don't know what they would have lost the rights to or what the issue would be. But for whatever reason, this one has not made it on to the Static Shock section of HBO Max, along with all the other HD remastered episodes.
Is it available to buy on YouTube by chance? I don't
think so. I think only the first season of Static is available to buy on YouTube. Maybe iTunes or something has it or something, but it was very hard to find this episode, which I did. I don't think we realized that when we first decided we were going to do it, but a year ago.
But like you said, because it was on the app. It's one of those. There's actually 2 episodes from Static that are not featured on the HBO Max streaming service for some reason. So still kind of left scratching our heads with that one. We did reach out for comment from HBO Max. I tweeted them a very sassy tweet, and we did not hear back from them. So at least in time for this recording. So still unsure as to why that episode is not available on the HBO Max. But regardless, we were able to track down a copy by very legal means, Liam. Absolutely. And we'll break down the synopsis here. I guess it's time to jump into that. But we kind of open up things in this episode, and we learn that Static and Virgil and Richie and Daisy and the rest of Static's high school are on a field trip through the forests of Dakota, I guess. We really don't know a lot. It's funny how these DCAU cities oftentimes just include whatever ecological systems that are required for whatever storyline. We talked about the Gotham Desert on the outskirts of Gotham City. There's just giant bodies of water and islands around Metropolis. So here apparently there's like a big bustling city, and then you drive a short way and there's forestry just outside of Dakota. So we get a field trip there, and a teacher, this Miss Moore, who Static and Richie are teasing Daisy about being her pet, seems to have a fondness for Daisy, at least here. No foreshadowing there whatsoever for the plot, but she appears to have gained favor with this Miss Moore. And as they're kind of traversing the forest in the school bus, they happen to look out the window and see a giant monkey, the symbol monkey, the famous child's toy from the 1930s, of the giant monkey clanging cymbals, jumping alongside their school bus.
Who can tell me what flora and fauna are? Daisy?
Flora are plants and fauna are animals.
Very good. And can you tell me what kinds of animals we might find in Dakota?
There are members of the Cervidae family like deer and members of the Rodentia family such as squirrels and raccoons.
Excellent, Daisy.
And I can tell you what kind of animal is on this bus. Can you say teacher's pet?
Yo, Richie, are there any giant monkeys in this part of Dakota? What in the world?
Definitely looks like major fauna to me.
What it looks like is some extracurricular activity for Static and Gear.
Yeah, that's a pretty dramatic way to open the episode, but Static and Gear are able to spring into action to try to stop the monkey. In the process, Gear is actually injured, which sort of puts him on the sidelines for the rest of the episode. But just as it looks like Static's about to bite the dust, so to speak, it's about to be crushed by the giant monkey's cymbals. Wouldn't you know it? We hear a voice from the sky. We look up into the sky, and Superman is here. And,
It's not a bird or a plane. It's Superman.
Yeah, we thought we had it on the first two guesses, but it was actually, it was Superman, as it turns out. And he's able to help Static defeat the monkey. And they're sort of all left sort of stroking their chins, wondering what exactly was going on and why a giant robot monkey would attack. And that sort of transitions us back to their high school, where Virgil and Richie are discussing what was going on. And wouldn't you know it, a certain mild-mannered reporter shows up to get the scoop on Superman's visit to Dakota.
We got props from Superman. Can you believe that?
And nobody around to hear it.
True. Maybe next time.
Be real. Superman's an all-star. He doesn't have time to hang out in Dakota. Trust me, that's the last we'll see of him for a long while.
Virgil! Richie! I want you to meet Mr. Clark Kent. He's a reporter for the Daily Planet.
Hey, I know you. My pops read your articles all the time.
Yesterday, Superman shows up, and now you. Is this like Metropolis Week in Dakota?
No, actually, Superman is the reason I'm here.
Mr. Kent's writing an article about Superman's fight with that giant monkey.
Well, I guess Superman did help out Static. A little. That's Static. S-T-A.
So you two saw the fight?
Yeah, we saw.
Really? Where were you when it happened?
See,
Well,
now,
okay,
that's a good
where
question.
were we
and
during
you know,
it?
that's
See,
probably why you're a good reporter, because you ask questions that are like that. Good.
Can I quote you two on that?
Mr. Kent, if you want to talk to someone who really knows the deal, ask Miss Moore. She was there, too. Miss Moore! Miss Moore! That's weird.
That's right. One Clark Kent shows up and he starts asking questions. It's funny because Virgil and Richie are discussing whether or not Superman has moved his city of operations to Dakota, and then Clark Kent shows up and they start to question if everybody's visiting from Metropolis that day. Apparently, Virgil mentions offhandedly that his dad reads Clark's articles all the time, so there's an explanation as to how he knows who Clark Kent is, I guess. Clark starts asking some questions about the giant monkey, not leading on that he's interested in finding out why perhaps the Toyman has made an appearance here in Dakota. And Richie and Daisy sort of point to this mysterious Miss Moore as somebody who was also a witness to what was happening. And wouldn't you know it, Clark never forgets a face, I guess, or a robot face, and immediately recognizes her and follows her into a classroom where she is repairing her robot face. And it is in fact Darcy, the Darcy doll, working on her face that we last left at the end of the Obsession episode. She was taking a train out of Metropolis, so she didn't go too far, I guess. She went to Dakota to become a mild-mannered teacher. So Clark begins questioning her and trying to figure out why Toyman may be continuing to seek her out, and she plays aloof. But we are quickly discover that this Darcy has a little bit more than meets the eye to her, at least in this story.
Yeah, and as Clark and Darcy are talking, some more giant toys appear. This time, a selection of like nesting doll rubber clowns show up. A bunch of them show up too, and this time, they're not just wreaking havoc. They go directly after Daisy, Virgil's friend. And so Static and Superman once again team up to fight off these clowns, and in the process, they are able to defeat them. There's some pretty fun moments we'll talk about in visuals, certainly, and maybe in voice acting as well, with seeing Superman and Static interact here. But then in the melee, however, one of the clowns is able to escape with Daisy. And that's when we sort of begin to unravel the mystery of what exactly is going on here. As you mentioned, Cal, Superman and Virgil go and sort of check out this Darcy's house and find a lot of mysterious parts and things, as well as a serial number, which leads them to a warehouse. But before they get there, we actually get to find out what's going on before the heroes do, which is that Daisy has actually been kidnapped because Darcy is actually working with the Toyman, with the idea being that Darcy wants to sort of assume someone's life, and because there's no record of her ever existing, she's going to take over an existing person's life. And so she has decided that person will be Daisy, and it turns out her interest was not in a sort of mentor or teacher's pet style, looking to help Daisy, but was in fact studying her so that she could better replace her.
Oh, yay! Miss Daisy is finally awake and ready to play.
What are you?
I'm Toyman. I'm so happy to meet you.
Let me go!
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Miss Moore, tell him to let me go!
Sorry, Daisy. He's brought you here at my request.
What? You're a part of this?
Not just part. Darcy here is at the very heart of everything that's about to happen.
Darcy?
Yes, Darcy. My most perfect robot toy. But she doesn't want to be a doll anymore. She wants to be human. She wants to be you. Let the game begin.
And there's some nice pseudoscience where the Toyman is going to build her a nanotech body.
Of course, it's the Deus Ex Machina of all science fiction and comic books. I think we once said it's like the modern day gamma rays, or yeah, it's the, how do you explain things away? Oh, it's nanites. Oh, okay, that's the catch-all.
Basically magic.
Right.
But yes, Darcy is transformed into a perfect clone of Daisy, right down to these nanites that make up her body can even recreate her DNA, as we find out as Superman and Static do finally arrive, and after some tussling with some toy soldiers of Toymans.
Kryptonite Green Army men at that.
That's right, and part plastic as well, so Static can't just electrify them.
Toyman, he thought of everything.
Devilishly clever man,
right.
Toyman. But yeah, that's a fun little sequence, and then yes, as we finally get down to sort of the fun part, which is which evil twin is the real Daisy part. Superman isn't really able to help, because right down to their skeletal structures, their internal organs, their DNA, they are exact copies. But thankfully, we have, speaking of like magic, fake science, Static has a solution.
Yeah, and so we have mentioned several times, I think, in our reviews of Static, that from time to time they just seem to use this plot device that his powers are kind of nondescript, so they just do whatever the plot calls for. If they need him to create, if they need electricity to make some bread explode, like we saw earlier this month, okay, that's fine. If it needs to short circuit and create an EMP, sure, it can do that too. If it needs to, whatever the plot needs to do, his powers can do. So in this case, Static reveals that his every person has an aura around them, a visual aura that can only be seen when electrified, and every living being has one. So by using his powers to electrify the air, everybody's aura begins to shine around them. Everybody has different colors. And the only person that doesn't have one would be a non-living being, that being Darcy, or the Daisy clone.
Wait a minute, lights! That's it!
What's it?
Every human has an electrical aura that surrounds them, and I can make it visible. A slingshot and a ping pong ball? What's that gonna do?
That ping pong ball packs enough energy to take out the entire block. Trust me, I created it.
You need a new hobby.
But that is how they determine that she is not the real Daisy. At that point, Toyman has escaped. He was kind of subdued for a moment, placed under some plastic box or something. And he comes out from under it, and Darcy is sort of fully expecting him to sort of save the day at this point. And instead, something really gruesome and grotesque happens instead.
Yes, he does establish that he has an antidote for as Darcy's body begins to break down, but he refuses to give it to her, and so she melts. Pretty gruesome, and they certainly followed the logic that we've talked about, that the creators of the various shows always talked about, which is when you have something that isn't a real person, you do like the most grotesque, violent things you can think of to it, because it's stuff you'll never get to do with an actual human being. So
right, they get that past the standards and practices.
That's right. So yes, the Daisy clone melts away, and that's sort of the ending there. Superman arrests Toyman, and Static and Daisy fly off back to Dakota. But yeah, so there's fun to be had here, and like I said, we'll talk probably more about that when we get into visuals and voice acting a little bit later. But this episode, I feel like it's interesting. It's interesting that they, rather than say the big leagues where they introduce Batman and Robin and the Joker, or really any of the other DCAU crossover episodes, other than using villains from those series, it was pretty much a standalone adventure featuring those characters in Static. Whereas this one, it was a very interesting choice to make this a direct sequel to a Superman episode, and not even like, I think, a Superman episode that a lot of people would have thought of like, oh, that's a loose end that needs some tying up. Sure. Like they do end, that episode does end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, as you mentioned. Darcy sort of escapes and onto a train, and we don't really know what happens to her. There is something of a loose end there, but wouldn't necessarily be the one that came to mind. But I really feel like the last act there, where Static, everything down from Superman not being able to tell them apart to Static having a magic electrical aura trick to solve the problem, was all just like, okay, this is a little silly even for a children's cartoon featuring giant robot monkeys. So
yeah, no, it's interesting, because I think, when we watched the episode, we discovered that, especially in the big leagues, and you look at when you have a character, a guest star come into an episode, especially this show, Static. It's a show about a teenager that is a superhero. So when you bring in other adult superheroes that have quite the large, powerful reputation, it's going to be hard not to overshadow Static with this character. And that's not what you want to do by bringing on a guest star. You don't want the guest star to have to clean up Static's mess. Like that shouldn't be what the story, or at least the culmination of the story. Maybe the superhero comes in, the guest star comes in to assist him, but at the end of the day, it's Static's show. He has to be the main hero. And but it's also hard when you have, an adult Batman and Superman, the Man of Steel, the Man of Tomorrow is your guest star. Well, how can a teenager who has powers of electricity be the hero in the end of the day? So they kind of had to, I feel like, dumb down. Maybe dumb down is not the right word, but sort of make it. How do you make a problem unsolvable for Superman but solvable for Static? That's kind of a weird balance of things to do. And I think it would have may have been a little bit easier to swallow if, instead of, you get to the point where Superman can't tell the two daisies apart, right? He does the X-ray vision. Well, okay, now Superman can't outstrength them into telling them who's the real Daisy is. He can't use his X-ray vision. Heat vision doesn't do anything for him. His powers mean nothing at this point. Okay, so Static's powers don't have to be the thing that solved this, though, because he has a personal relationship with Daisy. So what if he was able to do something to ask her about a shared experience that they'd had, because this isn't Daisy's first interaction with Static. So maybe there's a way that she can recall a memory that maybe that maybe Darcy wouldn't have been able to, or there was an injury that occurred or something in one of their interactions that ended in a broken bone, something that only Static would know about her that Darcy wouldn't be able to sort of emulate. So I feel like if they had done that, it would have been a little bit less silly. It just feels very silly with this whole thing that was it's never been established before. It's never used again. And it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And it just makes the ending feel very silly. And it's like, well, we couldn't have Superman be the person that solved the issue. We had to make Static solve it, but we had to create this goofy issue in order to have him be able to be the hero in the end.
Yeah, that definitely feels like there was another way. And I think they do put in some dialogue about how Toyman's recreating her memories or something too. I, again, don't know how, but apparently he was doing that. So I guess that's your technical out for that. But that's just.
But they chose to do that, though, right?
Right. That's right. If your defense of it is, well, I wrote it a different way, that's not really a great defense of why the story didn't go a certain way. So, look, for all these reasons, like I said, I think there's fun to be had, but it isn't perfect. Good, not great, I would say. And so I ended up on a 6 out of 10 for plot.
Yeah, I went just a tick higher. I ended up giving a 7 out of 10. I think you're right. There's a lot of fun to be had here. I love that they went back to sort of, even though the story doesn't exactly give the answer to some of the questions that we had at the end of Obsession, like, what was in the suitcase that Darcy was carrying? Was that Toyman's body? Why did she save him? Okay, this sort of implies that she may have brought him to Dakota to help her, but why all of a sudden at the end were they in cahoots again? Like, when she sort of was trying to break away from him at the end of Obsession. There's not really an explanation there. So it's great that they brought back these characters. I love that they didn't just use one of Static's villains. In that way, it does feel like this belongs in the world of the DCAU, because it's continuing those direct threads. These are characters that you wouldn't know unless you would watch Superman the Animated Series. That's great. Well, you might know Toyman, but that you wouldn't know this Darcy character unless you did that. The plot is definitely a little bit silly. It gets very silly when Darcy's going to be an exact clone, and then it's like we already talked about, the whole how Static solves it thing. It does get very dark when Toyman uses the self-destruct on her and then dangles the antidote over her head and then throws it into the boiling acid. That gets very dark, and that seems like, especially for Static, we didn't get a lot of that sort of dark undertone.
Hey, to run, but I'm not about to... What's happening to me?
I may be a fool for love, darling, but I'm no dope. I programmed a fail-safe mechanism in case you betrayed me. Again. Even now, the nanites are liquefying your body.
My body! My beautiful body!
And I'm the only one with the antidote.
Help me. My love, please.
Sorry, Darcy, but you just don't play fair.
It sort of adds a little bit to that character of Toyman being creepy and heartless. So I did appreciate that. But yeah, I think this could have been a lot better, especially with, some of the plot devices we've seen in the previous episodes featuring Batman and Robin. But it's still fun to be had in this episode, and it's great to see Superman and Static on the same screen together.
For sure. And that will bring us over to the visuals and animation section of our show. As I said at the top there is no credited director for this episode. But that being said, as far as visuals and fun stuff goes, again, anything with Toyman is generally going to be a layup as far as some really fun stuff. And this episode is no exception.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, right off the bat, as we mentioned, clanging cymbal monkey is one of the first things that you see. We also, we spent a lot of time this month reviewing very early Static episodes. This season has the benefit of having the investment and the different animation style that feels much more, even though it's not one-to-one DCAU, it feels much more at home and more like there's a higher budget involved, and there's much more care and time that's put into the actual animation. So that it is a stark contrast from the episodes that we covered prior to this and this month especially, but it does feel a little bit more, I don't know, it feels less low budget. It feels a little bit more cared for. There's more expression, there's more character for these people it feels less kind of web cartoon and certainly more like a cartoon that WB cared about. We will say one of the interesting visuals though, so we get Superman in this and he certainly, I think, looks very more akin as far as his color palette is concerned to the Superman the animated series. He's a little stocky, I think, a little bit more muscular, less Bruce Timm designs tend to be more squared off and straight lines. This one has more definition, certainly in his muscles and his arms and his legs, but there is one stark, like almost off-putting choice that they made that makes this feel almost like an alien creature outside of the DCAU.
Yeah, so there's two things that I think you're right. It's some sort of amalgamation for the most part between the Superman character design and character design. In the sense that he has the darker trunks. It's like the very dark red with just like the lighter red as the highlight color, like the original animated series did, as opposed to sort of the lighter reds in the in Justice League. But the biggest one is, as you were alluding to, Cal, is that he has we can see the whites of his eyes. He has we see the whites, and he has like blue eyes, which, if you're familiar with DCAU Superman, he doesn't have whites in his eyes, other than maybe an occasional close-up or something. We never see the whites of his eyes, and his eyes are sort of these sort of small black dots usually. So it was very, very distracting. And again, that's in a bubble, there's nothing wrong with that choice. But because this is supposed to be the Superman we know, we'll get to it in voice acting. He sounds like the Superman we know, or a Superman we know. But those eyes, man, they really pull focus in all the scenes he's in.
Yeah, it's very distracting, especially, I think, maybe one or two odd super close-ups in Superman the Animated Series. You would occasionally see the whites of his eyes, but that was something that they kept in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited also, was that he had colorless pupils. Like it was or and his irises were just dark black. And that was not the choice that this artist went with. So it feels a little bit alien at times, like pun intended. It feels like, is this a robot Superman? Is this really Superman? And and we'll talk about it in a few minutes when we get into the voice acting, but George Newbern is the Superman that's paired with this. So it feels a little bit almost like, is this DC animated direct-to-video Superman making a cameo here in this universe? No, it's definitely the same Superman, but it just feels at times like this Superman is I don't know. It was an odd choice, and it feels uncomfortable, I would say, is the word I would say at times. It just makes my skin crawl a little bit. He's not supposed to have the white eyes. It's not how that goes, but our artist choice, I suppose. Other visuals, Liam, that I thought were interesting, certainly as Virgil called it, the insane clown posse. That's the nesting doll clowns, and they have this sort of accordion / springy like arms and legs, jumping around. Really great visuals, very, very fun. As you said, with Toyman comes lots of fun of creating giant objects. There's a giant oven that features a chef with a clown nose on it, and that's how he's creating this clone of Daisy for Darcy to inhabit. I thought that was pretty fun. And we already mentioned the green kryptonite / plastic army men that come in to play at the end. That's another layup that I'm surprised they didn't include before. Green army men, that's a classic, like unlicensed public domain toy that should have just be a regular part of his regimen there. But it's a little goofy that he says, oh, well, I mixed kryptonite in with the plastic so that Superman is helpless, and the plastic, so Static is helpless.
Are all supervillains like this? Or do you just attract the really weird ones?
I'll handle this. You go after...
Superman?
My soldiers aren't green for nothing, Superman. They have kryptonite mixed with their plastic. Your power has no effect either. You see, they have plastic mixed in with their kryptonite. And as you know, plastic is not affected by electricity. Kind of works out nicely all around, doesn't it?
It's interesting that they made him smart enough to think of both of those things should he come into interaction, but kryptonite isn't one of those things that we know of that's readily available like it was, the Super Friends. There's just kryptonite everywhere. The DCAU seemed to make it that kryptonite was a little bit more difficult to get your hands on. So the fact that Toyman was able to get enough to create giant soldiers out of it leads one to believe that it's a little hard to believe at times, but still a fun visual, I suppose. But and I think Toyman and Darcy, they're worth talking about too. We have their character designs very similar, at least, to the character designs from Superman the Animated Series. Subtle changes here or there, especially with Toyman, but you can tell this is the same character.
Yeah, Toyman doesn't have quite the big bulbous head that he had in the Superman the Animated Series look, or even when he comes back in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited later on. But definitely that same eerie, terrifying smile. Definitely you can definitely tell it's the same character, and the same thing with Darcy. And even when she removes her face, as you mentioned, while she's talking to Clark Kent, even that design is pretty spot on for what that looked like in the Superman episode. So they did some good attention to detail with that stuff. But yeah, probably the ending there, despite the Deus Ex Machina ending notwithstanding, I do think there's some fun stuff in that last section with Virgil sort of blasting his way out of the army men, and then with with the sort of horrific melting of Daisy, or as Darcy as Daisy at the end. I think there's a lot of tremendous and fun visuals throughout the episode, and as we mentioned, it's just cool to see Superman and Static. Like, all of these team up episodes, even when they don't hit a home run in the plot department, I think are just fun because there's just that inherently cool thing about seeing your heroes cross over, especially I think in this case with Static, because other than one appearance in JLU, we don't get a lot of Static, or we don't get any other Static except for his own series. All of these big time superheroes coming in and hanging with Static is always pretty cool. So for all those reasons, I really enjoyed the visuals in this episode, and I gave it a 9 out of 10 for animation.
That's great. Yeah, I also gave it a 9 out of 10 as well, and didn't mention it, but the final scene, I think you mentioned it in passing, the final scene of the episode is Superman bidding Static adieu and flying off, and Static has Daisy with him, and they're flying back to Dakota, and she's sort of wrapped around him as they're flying through the sky. You get a nice pan through the night sky, and you see Static there and sort of the trail of electricity behind him as they're flying away. And Static has this great line where he talks about, loving being able to meet and hang out with your heroes. And Daisy sort of looks at him very lovingly and says, "Yeah, I know what you mean." And it's just a really touching little interaction between the two of them, and Daisy really kind of gushing over Static as Static is sort of gushing over Superman. But the visuals of that I thought were great, because you get the great panoramic across the sky and Static's hair flowing in the wind, hashtag jacket movement, hashtag hair movement. Some great animation there. But yeah, very strong visuals. Hard not to look at this episode and think that they hit it out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely agree. There's a lot of fun stuff, and always cool to see. And I think that sort of is almost the concept of a lot of these teams, is sort of Static feeling underprepared or unworthy, and the more established heroes kind of through their adventure, like, he kind of earns their respect. So that's very much on display here. So that's always fun to see. Moving on to music, as we mentioned, we are in one of the later seasons of Static, near the end of the third season here, and that means that there is some lyrics in the music again. Thank heavens!
Oh boy!
But despite all that, and we've certainly discussed that, and then we can certainly touch on it more here. But the big thing of this episode that I think hurts the music, because again, generally I like the music in the later seasons of Static Shock, but they use this Superman theme, and they don't use the Shirley Walker Superman theme, nor do they use the John Williams classic Superman theme, or even the the 1940s like Fleischer Superman short.
Anybody wants to help out a young, gifted, and about to be squashed hero? Now would be the time.
I'll take that offer. Need some help getting this monkey off your back, Static?
Superman?
They sort of use this weird, like, it feels like the type of music you would put on a YouTube video because you didn't want to get copyright struck by using the actual music.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
No, of course not.
But yes, yeah, it's unfortunate because, and I don't know, maybe this is just a theory here. Maybe WB didn't license the rights to this knockoff Superman theme, and that's why they can't put it on the HBO Max.
That would be amazing.
The HBO Max, because it really makes no sense. Now, going back to, I think was it the Big Leagues or Hard as Nails? One of those episodes that we talked about, maybe both. So the Batman crossovers that we've covered, they didn't use the Shirley Walker Batman theme for that, but they did use the Danny Elfman Batman theme for that, if I recall, for at least one of those episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a dancey version that I think plays at least a little bit in both of them.
So it's not as if, for whatever reason, there is a precedent set for this, and we don't we don't know the ins and outs of it. I would love one day to pick the brains of some of the people that were involved with this and some of the decisions that went into, why the animation shift so drastically from season to the first couple seasons, or why so many of the songs decided to have lyrics in them, and who was the knockoff Run DMC that they employed to do the hey soundtrack for so many early episodes. But it's very odd, and the Superman theme, it's not good. It just, like you said, it sounds like a fake superhero. It's like superhero track number 2 that you would pull off of a rights free or a license free website, and it's very low budget. It just kind of sounds like a synthesizer. There's not a lot of effort that went into it. And I think if it had been low budget synthesizer Shirley Walker, we would give it a pass. But because it's low budget synthesizer and it's just this similar refrain that plays over and over again, and it just, each time that he makes an appearance, it's not good, and it detracts and distracts. And on top of it, additionally, I'm not a fan of the soundtrack that has distracting lyrics playing. So much of the opening scene is just so loud. I felt like a super old person watching it, but it's loud anyway. There's a lot of noise happening, a lot of destruction happening with this monkey, and then on top of it, there's music playing, and there's lyrics on top of it, and there's superheroes that are screaming out in pain and agony, and it's just a very loud, distracting bit. So music, unfortunately for this episode, and maybe the bar is maybe set a little higher, I think, for us, because you have these established characters that have themes that are so iconic. We talk about music all of the time on this, and how important it is, and how it can make or break sometimes certain episodes. And well, I don't think it completely broke this episode, because obviously we gave it I gave it, and you gave it a high score for plot, or higher score for plot, and a very high score for animation. It's distracting at times, and it leaves sort of a disappointing taste in my mouth. So I went with a lower end score of 4 out of 10 for music for this week.
Yeah, and I'm a couple points higher. I went 6 out of 10 for my musical score. Like I said, I don't have as much of an issue with the regular static music, and I think the music when Dave first waking up in the warehouse, there's kind of this creepy funhouse circus music that's playing when you see Toyman for the first time, that I think really adds some good atmosphere there. So there's some highlights, but I think without a doubt, the Superman theme, if you can even call it that, as you said, because it's mostly just this sort of generic refrain, and it plays over and over again throughout the episode, that really does bring it down. So that's kind of a disappointment, and feels like maybe a missed opportunity there. So definitely not music, definitely not as high as it could have been. But that will move us on to our final category here, Cal, which is voice acting. Not a huge cast to talk about this week. We have our static regulars. We have a little bit of Jason Marsden as Richie/Gear. As we mentioned, he's injured in the first fight and kind of put out of commission for most of the episode, but we do get a little bit of him there. We have Bud Cort returning as Toyman, and just as creepy and weird as ever.
He sure is. He's really good, and it's interesting because we were watching this episode, and it occurred to me for the very first time, have a fan theory here, that we know Bud Cort did a lot of great voice work, has done a lot of great voice work, and his Toyman is really iconic. But if you kind of put all the pieces together, creepy smile, obsessive over sort of like childlike behaviors and toys and stuff like that, and then something just screamed out at me this week, and we were watching this episode. Is Bud Cort doing his Michael Jackson impersonation for his Toyman? Is what I asked you while we were watching this, and I think both of us had the realization that might be the case.
Yeah, there's definitely something there, whether or not it's meant to be sort of a straight impression or just there's just like an element of that to that. But it's definitely something that I had never thought about. But the more you hear it and you think about the character and the idea of this guy who never really grew up and who had this really weird childhood and all this stuff, like you're like, yeah, that I could see why Michael Jackson might be an inspiration, so to speak, for this character.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we probably have no way of confirming unless we at some point get the opportunity to talk to the great Andrea Romano, perhaps to pick her brain. But it seems like that could have been a direction he was going in. Even at times visually, I get a little bit of Michael Jackson, the upturned nose, the sort of big giant eyes and goofy smile, and the red lips. Definitely some Michael Jackson creepy vibes happening with that, but he's great in this episode. I think, we've loved his performance. If you go back in the archives at DCAUreview.com and check out our other Toyman reviews, both Obsession and Fun and Games, both of those episodes, we loved those episodes. They were fun, enjoyable. I think going into them, we were surprised at how much we really enjoyed them. At least one, if not both, are in our top picks section that you can check out at the archives at DCAUreview.com. But regardless, part of that is this performance, this creepy and sort of weird and goofy performance. And he's a little bit less creepy, I think, in this, because he doesn't have as much screen time, and it's not as much, especially in the obsession episode where he has this weird obsession with Darcy. It's a little bit less than that, but it certainly comes out in that last little bit where he decides that he's not going to give Darcy the antidote and just let her die.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some pretty authentic Toyman moments on display. No doubt about that with his performance here. But other than our two main heroes, which we'll get to in a moment, we have interestingly enough, we have just like probably a year prior to her starting on Desperate Housewives, we have Nicolette Sheridan voicing Darcy / Miss Moore, the teacher, and also, of course, the not quite real girl that Toyman created.
Thought I saw you ducking in here, Darcy.
Do you mind, Kent? I could use a little privacy while I fix my face. I've been having trouble with my left eye.
The things a girl does to keep up her looks.
Cute. What are you doing in Dakota?
A tip from Superman. He told me Toyman was here. I couldn't figure out why until now.
I thought changing my identity and moving to a new city would throw him off my trail. But Toyman's obsessed. I guess I knew sooner or later he'd find me.
And yeah, that's I think she does a solid job, but the real lion's share of the work, I think, in her performance, or this character's performance, is by Crystal Scales, who of course voices Daisy. But once Darcy is sort of turned into Daisy, Crystal Scales is also voicing Darcy, so she's voicing her own evil twin here, and she's got a lot to do, and I think she does a really good job.
It's useless fighting me. You won't feel a thing. No!
Stop!
Static, save me!
Huh? Gotcha. And you're coming with me too, Darcy.
But I'm not Darcy! Static, you've got it all wrong. I'm the real Daisy. She's the fake. She's lying, Static. You saw how she threw me into that vat. Static, you know who I am.
Well, Problem, Static?
Yeah, I kudos to both actresses. Miss Sheridan, as you said, would go on to become such a huge, like, Desperate Housewives ended up being, that was like the red hot show for that weird period of time, like 04 to 06 or whatever it was. It was like the most talked about, controversial, hot show on television. And this is right sort of before she that wasn't her break. She was obviously an actress for a very, very long time, but she would soon sort of become a part of an ensemble cast that was hugely popular. So her performance really great, and I think for another great pull for for Andrea Romano to get a fairly well-known established actress to come in and voice this character. And she did great. But as you said, Crystal Scales ends up doing such a lion's share heavy lifting once the transformation occurs, because she's playing two different versions of the same character. And we've seen that happen before in the DCAU. And, we'll see it again in the future when Kevin Conroy has to play two Batmans, and in multiple episodes, he has to play two Batmans. And, we've seen Superman, we've seen Tim Daly do it in playing himself in Bizarro. And there's something to that. You have to almost have it's not, I can't imagine this very easy, because you have to differentiate between the two characters, but you also are playing the same character almost. So it's cannot be an easy task for sure. And I think Miss Scales does such a great job, especially with kind of creating a little bit of seediness to Darcy's version of Daisy, especially after she's sort of revealed as being which one is the real Darcy and which one is the real Daisy. But she does a great job. I can't imagine it's easy to have to interact with yourself and deliver lines to yourself. So I think that she deserves lots of praise, and this is an outstanding showcase for her, I think, in this episode.
Yeah, totally agree. There's definitely a lot to do, especially there at the end when they're sort of trying to figure out which one is the real one, and she's both are sort of pleading, and when Darcy dangles Daisy over a vat of acid, as we mentioned, and then right down to that end there as Toyman lets her die. It should be noted, Superman and Static don't really try very hard to
they're just like, all right, well, she's dying. Okay, no worries. See you later.
All right. Problem solved. But yeah, I think that's definitely the strength of the episode from a voice acting perspective. Along with our two superheroic leads, of course, Phil Lamar once again as Static Shock / Virgil, and of course we have George Newbern playing Superman. And I will say, and this sort of gets into plot a little bit too, but he doesn't have a ton to say, like, other than that he's Superman. Like, all of his lines are pretty generic. Like, there isn't a lot of character for Superman in this episode. He's kind of just there, and like, he does a fine job with it, but it's definitely, I think, Phil Lamar and reacting to Superman, as well as a little bit of Jason Marsden's gear, sort of just being so in awe of Superman. I think that's really where the fun comes in. Not that George Newbern does a bad job, but he's kind of just there to kind of bounce dialogue off of Static and vice versa. He doesn't get to do as much character work, certainly, as we're used to seeing and hearing in Justice League.
Yeah, it's not very deep. It's kind of shallow, I think. I will say that it felt like the direction for his version of this Superman is a little bit different than what we were used to in Justice League Unlimited. There's almost a little bit more lightheartedness to this version of the character. And I would say that, something that sort of carried over from Superman the Animated Series and to Justice League and Justice League Unlimited for the direction of the voice acting for Superman, both from Tim Daly to George Newbern, is that it's more of, yes, there are some times where he may quip or give you a little bit lighthearted take, but he's kind of a serious Superman. He's not very 1950s, laugh when a lightning bolt strikes your chest Superman. He sort of takes things very seriously. He's serious in what he does. He's serious about his job. He's serious about his relationship. He'll have some sarcastic back and forth repartee with Lois or Jimmy, but he's not really a jovial, goofy Superman. And I feel like maybe the direction for this episode was a little bit different. So because of that, George Newbern's performance seems a little bit lighter, I would say, than what we typically heard from him. I feel like in Justice League, or certainly Justice League Unlimited, maybe Justice League Unlimited season 3, a little bit, when they started having some more fun with the show itself. maybe, but it feels so. That coupled with the visuals being sort of not what we're used to with Superman leads this to be, again, it sort of feels a little bit like Superman shifted 90 feet to the right.
Thanks again, Superman.
No problem. I'm glad I got here in time.
Hey, you two go ahead and chat. I'll be just fine.
Gear, you okay, bro?
No. My one chance to tag team with Superman, and I miss it because I bust my ankle.
Nothing's broken. Just looks like a bad sprain. You'll probably have to keep off it for a few days.
Whoa. I just had my ankle x-rayed by Superman. I'm never going to wash it again.
I have to go, but you two keep up the good work.
Wonder where he's off to. Hope he didn't leave the heater on at the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah, he'd have to start calling it the giant puddle of solitude.
Like, it just doesn't quite feel on spot for Superman. And you're right, he's not given a lot of dialogue, and he's not doing a lot in this episode. He's sort of there to play off of Static. And Phil LaMarr, I think, does a great job. I think he does a great job of balancing that idea that he's here, he's in awe of his hero, but he's also super pumped to be able to be working with somebody that he's looked up to his entire life. So I love that. I love that his performance also really does a great job of coming through with that. Like, if this was a kid and he got to work with his idol Superman, how happy, how pumped would he be? How fanboyish would he be? And I think between him and even Jason Marsden at the beginning, their conversation and dialogue and coming through, you could tell they're just super excited to work with Superman. So I think they are the standouts. Superman, maybe George Newbern, maybe not his best performance, but also a little bit out of character for him.
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, there's the tone of everything. Like you said, it's definitely a more relaxed kind of jovial Superman than a lot of you think of the Dark Side episodes or some of the stuff that he gets to do. The Cadmus arc, where he really takes Superman down some darker paths, and this was definitely it's kind of cool to see George Newbern's Superman in sort of or here, I guess in this case, in a more sort of traditional Superman, a little more lighthearted adventure. But yeah, as far as the dialogue itself, and again, you can put that on the scripting as much as I think as much, if not more, than on the performance or the voice direction, But yeah, I definitely agree that Phil LaMarr does a great job, and as we already talked about, Crystal Scales and Bud Cort. So for all those reasons, I gave voice acting a pretty strong 8 out of 10.
I ended up giving voice acting actually a very strong 9 out of 10. So despite this maybe not being George Newbern's best performance, I think I cut him some slack. And I think Bud Cort and Phil LaMarr, I think, and Nicolette Sheridan does, but all the three of them do a great job, I think, and really carry the lion's share here and do a great job.
Agreed. All right, well, that will begin to wrap us up here, Cal, and that will bring us to our final scores. Tallying everything up, it looks like I have a final score of 29 out of 40.
Nice. And I tallying things up, despite the fact that we had some major differences on some of these scores. They weren't that different, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, because tallying things up here, I end up with a exact same score of 29.
How about that?
40. I think that's back-to-back weeks we've had exact scores, so don't call it a streak, but maybe we're on it here. So I guess we can talk about rewatchability, huh? That's right.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely one that fits into that category, both because not only is it an adventure of Static and Superman teaming up, the one and only time you see that. So I think almost for the uniqueness of that alone, it would be worth watching or rewatching.
Yeah, it's a direct sequel to, even though it doesn't necessarily tie up all the loose ends, you do get a resolution to a character that was sort of left hanging, and you're sort of wondering what's happening to her. How many times did that happen where you had a character who, will they return? And then it was never they weren't given any more screen time, or is maybe explained away in a potential tie-in comic or something. So for this on screen to have a resolution, you get to hear Bud Cort back as Toyman. You get Superman and Static on the same screen. You get this Darcy character returning. You get to learn about this newfangled power that is never seen or heard from before or after this episode, where Static gets to see people's auras. Sure. Awesome. Great. No, tongue in cheek. But yeah, I'd say that this is, plus a lot of people, I think, maybe not having the nostalgic feelings that you do with the Batman the Animated Series, or Superman, or even the Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. You're going to be drawn to these episodes because maybe these are some good introductions to, all right, let me get into this by being there with a character that I'm familiar with. So I think based solely on that, like, give this a shot and then check out some more Static, because Static's criminally underrated. It's great. He's come, he's back in main DC continuity, a great new comic that's being published by DC. So he's gaining some traction. So it'd be great. Who knows? There's a live action Static movie we know that's in production. Michael B. Jordan is in charge of getting that underway. So Static, could be a huge superhero presence here in the not too distant future. So get ahead of the curve here and jump into some Static and kind of see where it all began, where a certain generation has some deep seated love for Static because of this series. So this is a good introduction, I think, or a way to sort of introduce yourself if you haven't watched a lot of Static before, but you'll kind of have to do some searching to find this episode, unfortunately.
Well, fingers crossed there will be Blu-ray releases in our future for both Superman and Static, and all episodes will be present and accounted for when we get there. But
here we go.
But yes, totally agree with you on all points on the rewatchability front, and that will begin to wrap us up here, Cal. And as feature Superman in our final Static review for the time being, I think it's about time that we take another trip to the sunny skies of Metropolis.
Hey, speaking of planning things, you would think that we planned it this way to end the month on Superman and then start next month off with covering Superman. It has been a little bit since we've done a month of Superman episodes, so it's about that time again, and we are excited to return back. And Liam, we will be picking things up next week with the episode Two's a Crowd, which is the second episode featuring Rudy Jones, aka the Parasite. So we'll be picking up. I think we probably covered his origins almost a year ago, also. So we're just kind of following in suit here. We'll have to see if there's other episodes we can follow up on here. Maybe a Live Wire. No, that Live Wire was definitely later on in the year, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out what we have to catch up on. But excited to do some Man of Steel coverage for the month of July already.
Absolutely cannot wait, and we will be back with you next week with that. But thank you everyone for listening, whether you do it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or if you do it on the Pod Tower YouTube channel, where you can check us out along with our friends over at Tim Talk with all their reviews, as well as the archived live streams of the Watchtower Database Boys. Lots of fun stuff over at the Pod Tower YouTube channel. Go ahead and give us a subscribe. Even if maybe you don't listen to a lot of podcasts on YouTube, we would still appreciate it. It helps us out. So if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. But however you listen, we thank you for doing so. And until next week, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.